Let's talk Brexit and the big news out of the UK. After more than a year of tense negotiations, a Brexit breakthrough. Britain's Prime Minister says she's secured a divorce deal with the European Union 2 years and 5 months after voters in the UK opted to quit the EU in a referendum. But she now must get the proposal through a fractious UK Parliament, and a number of her own lawmakers are vowing to block the deal. Can the Prime Minister survive? Joining us now on the phone lines from London, Simon Owen with Fox News Radio. Simon, thanks for joining us on Montana Talks.
Hi there, good morning.
Yeah, great to hear from you. So what's the latest word out of London?
Well, yeah, it's a fast-moving situation here now, and the British government is in turmoil over this because it was yesterday evening that Theresa May emerged, nearly 2.5 years after the Brexit referendum, when voters here decided to quit the European Union. Theresa May stepped out of 10 Downing Street yesterday and said that she'd got a plan for a divorce and that her cabinet had given her its backing and they were going to support this deal. And in her statement outside 10 Downing Street, she said there are difficult days ahead, and that has turned out to be quite the accurate assessment, because this morning 5 of Theresa May's government ministers have resigned, including 2 cabinet secretaries, and one of them is the Brexit secretary himself. The man responsible for negotiating this divorce agreement has resigned within hours of it being published. So Theresa May is now defending this deal. She's been back in Parliament today. She says she's taken the right choices, not the easy ones. But the opposition party said this was a half-baked, botched deal, and there are now some lawmakers in May's own party who are plotting her ousting.
So what's the rub? Why all out resign from her administration instead of just encourage tweaks to the plan? Can the plan be tweaked at this point? But what's the big rub here with May's plan?
Yeah, I mean, the resignations generally are coming from those who are in favour of leaving the EU, so they've become known as Brexiteers over here. And so, they are actually the ones in this who are technically getting what they want, Britain leaving the EU, but they don't think May is doing it the right way, and they don't believe that there is a hope for tweaking it. They presumably are hoping that they will bring down her government by making these resignations, or at least bring down her leadership and put a new leader in place who is more stridently in favour of a clean break from Europe. And just to try and explain that without getting too much into the weeds of this, because this divorce proposal runs 585 pages, so there's a lot of detail in there. But what May has come up with is a compromise plan that takes Britain out of the EU, in theory, while preserving very close ties to Britain's near neighbours in Europe. And that approach has upset Brexiteers, people who want to leave because they say it's not enough of a cut. It's upset those who want to stay in Europe. It's upset Scottish nationalists. It's upset the Northern Irish party that props up May's government. And as we've seen with the run of resignations this morning, it's upset many of her own ministers as well. Now, this is something that has been really divisive here. Brexit has caused a real split in British society, and whether it is possible for any Prime Minister to come up with a deal that would unite all these factions, I'm not sure, but Theresa May certainly hasn't managed to do that at this stage.
Very interesting. Is there another conservative leader waiting in the wings? Because I guess, to use an American analogy, it kind of sounds like the UK's version of the House Freedom Caucus. It basically feels that that this deal isn't going far enough, isn't going to be good enough for and I know it's hard to compare apples to oranges between the UK system and the American system, but it seems like, yeah, this is kind of their version of the Freedom Caucus now pushing back and saying, hey, you're not doing enough in this Brexit deal. But what potential other leader might be waiting in the wings? I mean, I would think if they're going to try to take down Theresa May, that they would have somebody else ready to take power.
Well, yes, you would think that, and actually there doesn't seem to be anybody particularly putting themselves forward, and indeed if you read the resignation letters from some of these senior ministers this morning, they talk about what they don't like about the deal, but they don't really go into detail about what they would do instead if they were the one that was in 10 Downing Street. So it is something that if Theresa May survives, it may well be because others see this as a poisoned chalice and realise that they would be on a tough assignment themselves if they were put in place. So we're waiting to see, first of all, are there enough lawmakers in May's party to, and the way they do it is you submit a letter saying you don't have confidence in the Prime Minister. Are there enough people there who are able to force a vote of no confidence in Theresa May's leadership? And that's the first question. If there's not enough people, then it won't happen, and she can carry on. But she also has to then get this through Parliament, which is messy in itself. She's got to get it approved by other EU leaders. There are many hurdles ahead for this deal, and this is just the divorce deal. This isn't the new relationship deal, which has to be figured out as well, how Britain and the EU are going to work together going forward. This is just the divorce, and even that is proving contentious.
Yeah, I noticed one of our political science professors from Montana State University back here in Montana, he's actually on the ground in London today as well, so he's like, oh, what a great time to be in the UK. Yeah, I think he was there the last time the big news took place.
If you love political intrigue, House of Cards, meets Game of Thrones, whatever, then absolutely your eyes should be trained on London today.
That's right. Well, what's the stories you'll be watching for in I don't know, the days or the hours, the weeks, I guess, depending on how quickly this all moves? What are you going to be looking for?
Well, I mean, the primary question is, does Theresa May survive long enough to push this deal through? And I think we expected there to be a few ministerial resignations, but we probably didn't expect the Brexit secretary himself to go, a really senior Brexit figure. So that's been the first sort of major unexpected twist. And this is uncharted territory. No country has ever left the EU before, let alone the UK specifically. And so where it goes from here, you have to wait and see, because as you say, you talked about potential candidates to replace Theresa May, but no one seems to be really putting their head above the parapets at the moment. And so is there going to be a leadership challenge or not? So the immediate question is the next few hours and days, does this leadership challenge emerge? If not, then Theresa May continues to weather yet another storm in this very stormy period in British politics as she tries to take Britain out of the EU.
Well, and I wonder back here in America, I don't know if there's been any tweets from President Trump about any of this yet, but I know he was had a close eye on Brexit when that was developing. So we'll keep following on that front as well. Simon Owen, Fox News Radio, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us with the latest.